Councilwoman, you are muted.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first order of business may not even be on the agenda to introduce to us our newest planning commissioner, Tracy Johnson. Tracy, are you present?
I'm here.
All right. Are there any words that you'd like to say to us to let us know a little bit about yourself?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be sworn in and be a part of the team. I look forward to working with all of you and getting to know you personally. I am excited to get started. So thank you.
Awesome. Great. Okay, first order of business is Devane's Cafe and Crepes. And Janine Harrington, could you?
Might want to approve the minutes?
You're absolutely correct. Thank you very much. I actually had that on my cheat sheet and still skipped it. So let's review the minutes of May 5th. And hopefully everyone's had a chance to review them. Does anyone have any comments on those minutes? So do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
Mike, this is Evelyn. I move that we accept the May 5th, 2021 meeting minutes as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Is anyone opposed to accepting the minutes as written? Hearing no opposition, the minutes are approved. Thank you. And thanks for bringing me back to that, Evelyn. Okay, matters of for the meeting. We will now go to Devane's Cafe and Crepes. And Janine Harrington, can you start with the staff report?
Absolutely. Good evening, Planning Commission members. Again, welcome aboard, Tracy. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
For the Devane's Cafe and Crepes is a major site plan approval that is coming before the commission this evening. For the project, we have the applicant and owner, William Devane, who I heard on the phone call a little bit earlier, and their engineer and representative, James Erdman with Dyer Associates. So the subject property that we're looking at tonight is located at 5695 Washington Avenue. It's just south of the Roswick Road and Washington Avenue intersection, directly next to the State Highway Finance Office. So the project is currently zoned commercial highway, and I do apologize, in the staff report it says existing use, restaurant use 63, and that should have said proposed use. The existing use is a residential dwelling that was non-conforming within the commercial highway zone. The property itself is 1.35 acres. To the north, you have commercial highway, which is now a hair salon, and then there's some vacant property that's looking to be developed. To the south is Industrial Light, which again is the State Highway Department of Finance building. To the east, you also have Industrial Light, and then there's a mix of uses on that property, including retail, personal business. And to the west is Commercial Highway that also has a residential dwelling on it. For the background information, the applicant has submitted their application on June 10th of 2021 for the review and approval of the major site plan to convert an existing residential dwelling to a restaurant. On May 19th, the application was presented and approved by the Design Review Board for exterior renovations, signage, and a dumpster enclosure. So for the proposed development, the main part of the overall site plan is the parking lot addition. The house is existing, and they will be doing a small addition on the back for a kitchen, but most of the work is being done due to the parking lot and the impervious area that is being added. The parking lot is going to be coming off of what was an existing semicircle driveway. They are going to be closing off one side of the driveway and adding stormwater management facilities to account for the new impervious area. So they are trying to make sure that the parking lot is a safe space for people to come in and frequent the cafe. Under the criteria for approval and findings, we look at the Code of the Town of La Plata, and under Chapter 167 for stormwater management, the stormwater management site development plans, or as we call it, Step 2, have been approved in compliance with this section. The applicant has not submitted the final site development plan, which is Step 3 for review at this time. And the site will be treated by 4 submerged gravel wetlands located to the north, west, and south ends of the site, and 1 bioretention pond to the east of the site. Under Chapter 173-9 Streets, the site will utilize the existing exit entrance off of Washington Avenue. Under the proposed reconfiguration, patrons will use the eastern property line on Washington Avenue as the entrance and exit to the site. All streets have been reviewed and are in compliance with the town's code. However, the entrance will need to be reviewed and approved by Charles County government, and that is currently being reviewed at this time. They are proposing sidewalks to be provided along Washington Avenue with ADA ramps in accordance with the Charles County Design Manual. For Chapter 173-70, Forest Conservation, this site is exempt from forest conservation requirements since they are disturbing less than 40,000 square feet of forest on the site, and they did submit a declaration of intent, which has been noted by staff. Under Chapter 186, Waters and Sewers, all of the water and sewer connections are being provided in compliance with this section. Under the commercial zoning regulations in 191-30, we looked at the commercial highway zone for the development standards. So for the use, which is 63 restaurant, the minimum lot area is 15,000 square feet. Minimum lot width is 100 square feet. Maximum lot coverage is none. Maximum height is 70. Front setback is 45 feet. There are no required side setbacks and a 25-foot rear setback. Open space requirements are not required under the most recent revision of the zoning code that was adopted in October of 2020. So per this section, the site is in compliance with the dimensional requirements. The minimum site will meet the 100-foot minimum along Washington Avenue, which is 258 feet long. The site will have a 75-foot front yard setback, which is existing along Washington Avenue. No side setbacks are required. However, they only have the parking on the one side to the south, which will be up against the property line. The rear setback is 136 feet, which again is in compliance with the 25-foot rear setback that's required. The principal building is about 35 feet plus or minus, so that is also in compliance with the height maximum for that zone. For the lighting standards, the applicant did not provide parking lot lighting in accordance with the section. There are existing lights that are along Washington Avenue, 2 existing street lights, and all of the lighting that is attached to the building will also be in compliance with this section. It is aimed down and shall not flicker or cause any disturbance within this section. For 191-44 parking requirements, under the town code, a use 63 for restaurants requires 1 space per 100 square feet of public accommodation area. The applicant has proposed to reconfigure the existing parking lot to allow for 1 loading space that will be to the rear of the site. And I did re-upload the major site plan the day after I posted the meeting that shows where that loading space is going to be located. 26 parking spaces will be provided on site. There's 23 standard spaces and 2 handicap spaces with 1 van accessible handicap space. A total of 12 parking spaces and 1 loading space are required under the town code. For landscaping, the parking lot landscaping has been met on the site, and the applicant has chosen to incorporate stormwater management into the landscaping area, which is a very good use of the space. Code requires the perimeter buffer yard or perimeter landscaping within the parking lot to contain 2 Class B trees for every 40 linear feet of parking lot and 15 shrubs. The applicant has provided 8 river birch native canopy trees, 8 red maple native canopy trees, 5 serviceberry native understory trees, 16 azalea shrubs, which aren't the one non-native type that they have chosen for the site. And within the stormwater management facilities, there'll be a total of 12,975 square feet of plantings, including purple stemmed aster, blue flag iris, cardinal flower, deep water duck potato, American water lotus, and red-headed grass. All of those are native to the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We are trying to encourage native plantings. That will be a requirement once we actually adopt Chapter 108. But since we have not done that yet, we just encourage it to the greatest extent possible. In the comprehensive master plan from 2020, we took a look at a few of the elements that would apply to this site. So under the land use element, the site is in conformance with our land use element, which labels this site as commercial. Under the transportation element, goal number 16, make the community a walkable community. The site has proposed the 5-foot sidewalks that will eventually connect to the overall street network and allow pedestrians to easily access their site and then continue down onto Rosewick Road to go to that shopping center as well. Under transportation element, goal number 17, better manage the supply of existing parking and limit new off-street parking. In this instance, the site was a residential dwelling, so they did need to incorporate some of the parking. However, they will be utilizing some of the existing parking area or driveway area to reduce the need for more spaces. With that, staff's recommendation is approval of the major site plan in accordance with the town code and with the 2020 comprehensive master plan. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have of me. And we also have the applicant and their representative here to answer any questions you may have of them.
Okay, do any commissioners have questions for the director or of the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, John Mudd. I just have a couple of quick questions. Earlier, Janine, I think you mentioned that you believe presently the county is reviewing the entrance plan.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Erdman, I guess you've already filed that specifically with the county. And I guess the question is the county requiring a separate entrance permit for that revision?
No, and Mr. Devane can speak a little bit more on this. There was discussions between Mr. Devane and Donna Doherty directly. There will be no entrance permit required. The only stipulation was that there needed to be, of course, the 5-foot sidewalk, and the 5-foot sidewalk does occur on the property. So one of the stipulations was that there would be an easement provided 2 feet off the back edge of the sidewalk that would be provided. That document has in fact been prepared and is with the attorney awaiting the preliminary title report to go to, in this case, the county.
Okay. Well, and I guess my bigger concern is at the end of the day, you're going to revise the entrance, which I think is a wise move, just to create a singular access point. And my only question is it going to be designed to what the county would normally see as a commercial type entrance?
Yes.
Okay. That's reassuring. I appreciate that. The only other question has to do with site lighting, and they indicate that there's no parking lot lighting proposed. Is it a requirement, or is it felt that there's adequate lighting to support pedestrians at night?
So that under the town code, it's to provide adequate lighting where needed. So I'll let James address that.
Right. As of this time, Mr. Devane had not proposed to do any on-site parking lot lighting. Everything was going to be onto the building. Perhaps Mr. Devane, you can speak to that any greater detail.
Right. Well, I'm not promoting over lightage of the site. I just want to make sure that at nighttime, obviously, if customers are leaving and entering the building, they're not doing it in the pitch black. And obviously, it sounds like there's a lot of ancillary light at the front street line and from the building, which ought to satisfy any needs. So again, just not being overly particular, but just want to make sure it's adequate.
Yeah, I believe, I'm going to speak for Mr. Devane. I believe that if he finds that it is not lit well enough, that he'll probably have to come back to the town if he should so choose to add any site lighting. But as of this time, there was no proposed site lighting.
This is Mike Gann. I'd like to piggyback on that question. Is the intent for this restaurant to be serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or some of the above, or what's the intent?
This is William Devane. We're looking at having breakfast 7 days a week, and dinner on Friday night and Saturday night. Is what we're proposing right now.
Thank you. Back to you, John.
All right. Well, again, James, thank you for all the clarifications. I think that's the extent of the questions I had. To me, it seems like a fairly simple proposition, and it should be an attractive amenity to the town once completed. So, again, thank you for your clarifications.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions or comments?
I have a question if possible. So you asked what the intent was. And so Mr. Devane said that breakfast 7 days a week, dinner Friday and Saturday. What will it provide times outside of those times?
Well, it's a cafe and creperie. We're going to have homemade crepes and it's open for breakfast and lunch. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner on Friday night and Saturday night, but just breakfast and lunch for
The rest of the week.
Monday through Thursday.
Okay. Thank
Any
you.
other questions or comments, Tracy?
None. Thank you.
Okay, I have two. Actually, one is specific to the project, and Janine, your report prompted me to ask another question. But the first one is, it appears that this was submitted June 10th, and it appears that the Design Review Board has already approved it. Was that before or after June 10th?
That was before. So with the way that we revised the Design Review Board, the Chapter 16 under the Town Code, previously the Design Review Board would review all aspects, including site layout, parking, landscaping, all those types of elements. We went back and revised it to where the Design Review Board is really only looking at building facade. So anything that has to do with the building directly, elevations, attached lighting, colors, materials, those types of elements. And then the Planning Commission will be the approving authority on the site layout, parking, and any other element that's under the zoning chapter. So they did get the building facade and architectural review approved by the Design Review Board in May.
Okay, so we are seeing tonight nothing different than we would have seen. Let me see, how do I say that? The Design Review Board met, they approved it. We're seeing what they approved.
Well,
correct?
like I said, they're not approving the site plan anymore.
No, I understand.
They're-
All they've
yeah.
done is the facade, and that's not really discussed in our in the proposal tonight, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Could I entertain a motion for acceptance or declination of the proposal?
Mr. Chairman, John Mudd, I'll make a motion for the commission to approve the major site plan for Devane's Cafe and Crepes, file number MJSP 507-2021.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Mike, this is Evelyn. I second the motion.
Thank you. And is, just rather than taking a poll here, is there anyone opposed to accepting this proposal? Not hearing any, the proposal passes. So Mr. Devane and Mr. Erdman and others of your team, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
We thank you very much. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, we can move on to 14 West Hawthorne. This is an R8 to commercial highway. Janine, you want to take it from here?
Absolutely. Let me make sure I'm unmuted here. So for this proposed, this is coming before you. This is a zoning map amendment request on behalf of Charles County government. We do have Deborah Hall here representing Charles County on this request. So pursuant to Chapter 191-61.b of the Town Code, we have received a petition for a zoning map amendment, which has been submitted to the Planning Commission for review and instruction. The site that is under question is 14 Hawthorne Drive, or as many people might know it as the Armory property currently owned by Charles County government. So for the proposal, they've submitted a zoning map amendment for a zoning change from what is currently zoned as R8, or what we consider residential 8,000 square foot lot, and they're requesting that the property is rezoned to commercial highway. Staff has reviewed the request for the zoning map amendment, and I provided a few comments for the Planning Commission to consider within their, if they choose to do a written recommendation to the Town Council. So my first comment is that the property, as it's currently zoned R8, with the existing use as a government facility, which is use number 18. Currently, use number 18 is not permitted in the R8 zone, and therefore the property is currently non-conforming. However, a government facility is permitted in the commercial highway zone, so that would be in support of rezoning the property to commercial highway. The second comment that I noted was that the property currently abuts CH zone to the north, east, and south, and there is one R8 property to the west, as shown in the reference document number 8, which is the existing zoning map. The property to the west currently has a clubhouse use, and even though that's zoned R8 as well, that's also a non-conforming property. There are no residential dwellings directly adjacent to the property, and due to the proximity of the commercial highway zone and considering the surrounding uses, staff feels that the rezoning request can be justified. And my third comment is just about the comprehensive plan. So the town, when we adopted our comprehensive plan, that site, as it's shown currently, is shown as medium density residential on our land use map within the comprehensive plan. So we would need to do an amendment to our comprehensive plan land use map to make that correction if this zoning map amendment was approved by the Town Council. So that's just something to consider, that in the future we may have to do an amendment to that to bring those two into compliance with one another. But based on my comments and my review, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission review the proposal and make a recommendation to the Town Council if desired. Under the section 191-61, it requires the town clerk to refer the application to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission may submit a written recommendation to the Town Council if they so choose. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Planning Commission may have. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a representative from the county here should you have any questions of them.
So Janine, I have a process question. I'm not clear what the Planning Commission is being asked. Are we expected to make a recommendation to the Town Council, or could we pass judgment without involving the Town Council?
Danielle, do you have a better clue on that one? I feel that the way that the code is written, it states that the Planning Commission can make a written recommendation. Otherwise, if you have comments or no comments, you can certainly provide those as well.
Yes, but the town code is written. The Town Council is the legislative body. To approve a zoning amendment would require legislative action in the form of an ordinance. The Planning Commission is tasked with reviewing and making recommendations on any zoning request. And then therefore it would go to the Town Council, and that recommendation could be to ask the Town Council to introduce an ordinance and schedule the public hearings. Also, Director Hare, I hope did I answer your question before? I have a question of my own.
Yes, in fact, you answered the way I was reading this coming into the meeting tonight, that when we're done all our questions and commentary, It's up to us to make a recommendation to the town council.
Yes. Director Harrington, would it be possible that we take the revision to the land use map in the comprehensive plan on the same path? Would that be difficult to do so it's clean and everything is, it would be two different ordinances, and then we can schedule the public hearings at the same time as well?
Absolutely. That's just a matter of changing the ArcGIS map to update that one property, and I can certainly have that prepared to go in line with this zoning map amendment.
I'm very happy to hear that. That was my other question. Okay, if we're going to have to change the comprehensive plan, what, when, how, and so if we do it all at one time, that makes a lot of good sense.
And luckily, it's just updating that one map. There's nothing else within the comprehensive plan that would contradict this zoning map amendment. So it's just updating that one map.
Excellent. So with that process of discussion out of the way, are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, John Mudd, I just have one question, and maybe this town staff knows better. Typically in the state of Maryland, there are two threshold tests that an applicant has to meet to warrant a comprehensive or a zoning map amendment. And one is either a change in the character of the neighborhood, or the second threshold would be a mistake in original zoning. And both of those can be onerous burdens for an applicant. I did review the town's code extensively, and I didn't see any mention in your process or procedures, although they're minimal, that talks about the burden of just demonstrating change or mistake. And again, I'm assuming the town operates under obviously the Maryland legal system in that sense. I'm not suggesting you're doing anything wrong or that it needs to be done in that fashion. But what I would suggest to you is that in light of not requiring that burden to be demonstrated, I would suggest this is clearly a mistake in original zoning, in that obviously you've had a non-conforming use now for a number of years that doesn't match the base zone. So I'm all in favor of this amendment. I'm simply questioning the legal basis that an applicant in the town has to see to in terms of authorizing the change. If it's part of the town code, it's not a requirement, then it's not a requirement. And so that's fine. Again, not being critical, I just want to make sure we're all on the same wavelength. And again, the hindrance is my background and my history in terms of these issues, which certainly may not be quite the same as the way the town handles certain things. So that's pretty much my question, but I think it's a sensible application.
So is that a rhetorical question, John, or
well,
should
you know,
we
kind of
get the...
on. I guess the question is if under the town code there's no obvious requirement that either of those thresholds be met, then we can leave it at that. That's fine. I'm not suggesting the town has to do anything special here if historically and by code, local code, this type of application basis is sufficient for us to proceed.
And I do not honestly know the answer to that question. I'm not sure if Danielle has more insight on that. It's certainly definitely something we can look into just to verify how that
Sure.
works.
I mean, I don't think it hurts this application in any way, shape, or form, but it might be not like you don't have anything to do anyway. It might be something fun to look into and see from a legal basis whether that needs to be fixed.
Right.
Well, maybe
Absolutely.
this could be a good opportunity for the applicant to weigh in on what has driven the applicant to provide this recommendation to us.
So I think you're asking me, the Deputy County. So first of all, thank you very much for having me on your agenda tonight. We're very appreciative on behalf of the commissioners and the county administrator. They all send their regards. I'm here this evening because we are interested. We had a very wonderful conversation with your town clerk, Miss Danielle, and Janine Harrington. And we did not, Judy, and also I also want to recognize Miss Judy Michael is on the phone call tonight as well. She's our property acquisition officer. And the county is interested in surplusing this property. It's a vacant property. We're really only using it for storage. And so it continues to decline. It needs, the county's done a study on the building. It would take millions and millions of dollars to bring that building up to any kind of code to be able to use the facility. And so we're interested in getting it back on our tax rolls. And so we are going to surplus the property and actually sell it. Having the property properly zoned and zoned commercial would benefit the county greatly in the asking price and in a bidding situation. And so that's what we're interested in doing this evening. And that's what we're asking the Planning Commission to consider, to rezone it. And when I had the conversation with Ms. Harrington, your planning director, it's not even properly zoned for the use that we're using it for. So it seems to be, I kind of wanted to answer John Mudd's question, because I think out of that, he was kind of saying, I think there's a mistake here. And I believe it's a mistake as well, because I don't believe it's zoned properly even for our use. But I would let Janine weigh in after my comments. But that was my understanding, that it would be a very simple process. And hopefully I've answered the president's question, which is, you know, what is our plan for the property? We're using it for simple storage right now. We're not fully utilizing the property, and it will cost us a lot to repair it. And so in light of all of that and our initial studies, the commissioners have opted to sell that property.
Yes, your response was very helpful. Thank you very much for that. Are there other questions, comments from commissioners? Not hearing any, could I entertain a motion on whether or not we make a recommendation to the town council to move forward with this?
Mike, this is Evelyn. I thought Danielle was going to respond also. I wanted to hear what she had to say, if that was her intent.
Oh, okay. Danielle?
I had planned to answer Director Harrington's question about whether I had any information about the the state laws related to rezoning petitions. I do have familiarity with that. However, when we developed our town code, and Janine worked extensively on this with town attorney, there was no mention of including that in the code specifically to require that burden of proof to any applicant or petitioner. That's all I had there, so I really don't have a clear answer either. So I apologize for that. If you don't mind, I would like to speak to the recommendation options for the Planning Commission. That would be, if you would like to make a recommendation that this moves forward, that would include recommendation for the town council to introduce an ordinance and to schedule the required public hearings. The ordinance will require a public hearing before the Planning Commission and the Town Council prior to consideration of adoption of the ordinance.
Thanks for that clarification. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we entertain a motion? Not hearing any. Would one of the commissioners, please make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, John Mudd, I would make the motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the Town Council initial acceptance of the application for zoning map amendment, and that the council prepare the necessary ordinance for future public hearing consideration as outlined by Danielle.
Very well worded. Is there a second? Tracy or Evelyn?
I'm sorry. I second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, so similarly as before, is there anyone opposed to the motion presented by Mr. Budd?
I do have a discussion
Oh, I'm
question,
sorry.
if
Go ahead.
possible. I'm sorry. And so you mentioned something about future commercial businesses. Obviously, that will be discussed at a later date, right? Or is that to be discussed now with what types of businesses, or how does that work?
So that would be discussed at a future meet, or in the future, if they do, once they do sell the property, whoever purchases that property is going to have to go through either a site plan process or at least a building permit process in order to bring that building up to code. So depending on what exactly they're planning on doing to that building will determine which path they take. If they're disturbing 5,000 square feet of ground or more, they'd have to do a major site plan. And follow a very similar process to what we reviewed under the Devane major site plan. And that would follow up with any grading permits and building permits. And during any part of those reviews, whether or not they're just doing the building or if they're doing site improvements, staff would analyze the use of that building in accordance with the town code and whether or not the use is permissible in the commercial highway zone. If it was not permissible, they would not be able to proceed with that use. So there's several ways that we would make that consideration to determine the proposed use and if it's in compliance with the commercial highway zone and their regulations.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, not hearing any. Is anyone opposed to Mr. Mudd's motion to recommend to the town council to begin the ordinance process and public hearings related to changing the property from R8 to commercial highway? Anyone opposed? Not hearing any, then that recommendation will go to the town council.
Thank you, commissioners. I appreciate the audience this evening, and on behalf of the commissioners, thank you as well.
So thank you and Judy for being here. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.
Okay, the next item is add the hospital campus zone.
Okay.
Janine?
So very similar to the request that we just listened to. This coming before you is a proposed zoning text amendment for the hospital campus zone overlay. This is again pursuant to Chapter 191-61.b of the Town Code for the petition of a zoning text amendment and zoning map amendment that's been submitted to the Planning Commission for review and instruction. So for the proposal, the applicant, which is the University of Maryland Charles Regional Medical Center, has submitted a zoning text amendment and subsequent zoning map amendment that proposes to create a hospital campus zone in accordance with the 2020 comprehensive plan. As part of our comprehensive plan update, we did give the opportunity for applicants to submit proposed zoning change requests or any kind of requests that would be included in the comprehensive plan. Subsequent to that, we did receive the hospital campus zone for consideration, and that was approved and included within the comprehensive plan update. So the proposed zoning text amendment is including revisions to Chapter 191 zoning code and the following sections as referenced. So Section 191-5, which is the word usage and definitions. Section 191-6, the establishment of zones. Section 191-10, which is the table of permitted uses. They're proposing to add Section 191-35.1 for the hospital campus zone. Section 191-43 parking requirements, 191-48 buffer yards, 191-51 special exceptions, 191-65 signage allowed with permits, and 191-66 signs allowed without a permit. So staff has reviewed the application and the subsequent zoning text amendment that is before you tonight. And just to give a little bit of history and a little bit of background, the hospital is a major economic facilitator within the town of Oplata and has developed over the years to create a hospital campus that is comprised of several buildings, currently encompassing the R8 zone and CB zones on the east side of downtown. The hospital block sits and is bounded by Charles Street to the north, Garrett Avenue to the east, Wycomico Street to the south, and Oak Avenue to the west. This also includes individual commercial properties and some single-family homes that have now been demolished on the one side and would be considered for rezoning for the hospital campus zone. Staff acknowledges that there are neighborhoods and businesses adjacent to the main campus that are currently being affected by the hospital and should be considered. Some properties surrounding the hospital and abutting the central business zone have been identified for potential infill development or redevelopment as part of our planned redevelopment and infill district, or PRID. Town staff and the hospital administration have had a running dialogue over the years, and both sides have identified the need to rezone the hospital properties into in this case, an overlay zone. And the rezoning would help define the edges of the hospital and influence how the hospital is able to develop in the future. This hospital campus zone, as I mentioned, was included in the 2020 comprehensive plan as adopted on September 28, 2020. So after reviewing the zoning text amendment, staff had a few comments. We had already given comments back to the applicant, which they had responded to. So these are really just things that we had brought up. And again, it's going to be the town council that either accepts or denies these, but we will look to the Planning Commission to see if you have any recommendations on these comments. So under section 191-10, which is the table of permitted uses, they did include several accessory uses for the hospital campus zone, one of which was a fast food restaurant. On a staff level, we didn't feel the need to incorporate this into the hospital campus zone. Fast food restaurants are what we would consider or have a drive-through window ordering system and require a special exception by the Board of Appeals. Any of the cafe, restaurant, walk-up restaurants, any of those, we feel it would be appropriate for the zone, but we just didn't feel that a fast food restaurant would be a favorable addition to that area. Under the development standards in the proposed text amendment, they indicate that interior landscaping will not be required. When you look at our comprehensive plan under the land use goals and actions, goal number 3, the goal of this zone would be to ensure integration of hospitals and associated healthcare facilities into the community in which they are located, and which may allow the zone to float over the campus, and also show a public benefit of doing so. Within the comprehensive plan, they talk about parking requirements for a hospital, and providing active street frontages, enhanced landscaping, off-site urban green space, etc. I do not believe that the interior landscaping being removed as a requirement is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Staff would request that this is reviewed and revised to include landscaping requirements that would conform to the comprehensive plan's guidance while still providing flexibility within the hospital campus zone. So if they didn't feel that the existing interior landscaping or perimeter landscaping within the town's code is acceptable for the hospital use, we understand that, and we can see where there may be some changes requested, but we would like to see some type of landscaping incorporated into this zoning text amendment one way or another to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. Under Article 8 for signs, staff noted that there are several instances where signage would be permitted without needing to obtain a permit by the town. We agree that the hospital should have a common sign plan, so the need for design review board would not be necessary. There is a need to address limits on the number, size, type, and placement. We have had issues with signage in that area blocking site visibility in the past, and that needs to be considered. Staff would like to recommend that language is added to address site visibility triangle, whether or not, this is, with all the signage, just to make sure that there aren't going to be any issues, especially from the fact that we have ambulances and medical professionals that need to get in and out of there quickly. And if there is any site visibility that's kind of in question, I feel that would bring some hazards not only to the hospital staff but to those trying to get to the hospital or to their homes and in the neighboring residential area. And my last comment, under additional provisions applicable to the hospital campus zone, staff would recommend that if the overall intention is to provide greater flexibility for design in the hospital campus zone, that design standards should be incorporated into the code with a statement that the hospital campus zone is exempt from the design review board approval process. Since they own properties in multiple zones, as I mentioned before, like R8 and central business, any of those properties that are in the R8 zone would be exempt from the design review board anyway, and those within the underlying base zone of CB would not be exempt. So I feel that it would be better to provide a standard set of design criteria that would apply to the entire hospital campus zone to make sure that it's a cohesive design and to keep everything kind of in line with one another. If we have one area that's an R8 and they didn't need design review board approval, and then they do a certain type of fencing, and then they go before the design review board and they decide they don't like that, that starts to become problematic for the overall cohesiveness of the site. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission review the proposal and make a recommendation to the Town Council if desired. And again, Section 191-61 of the Town Code requires the Chief Executive Officer to refer completed petitions to the Planning Commission. The code states that the Commission may make the recommendation to the petitioner for proposed revisions or may move forward a written recommendation to the Town Council for introduction of an ordinance and scheduling of a public hearing before the Planning Commission and Town Council. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have of me. And I know we also have Steve Scott and Matthew Martin representing the hospital, should you have any questions of the applicant.
So are there any questions or comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, John Mudd, this brings us to an interesting segue. This is the third category for a zoning change, which I didn't mention earlier, the change or mistake with the two standard tests. But what you're dealing with tonight is really a comprehensive rezoning of a piece of property or pieces of properties consistent with the comprehensive plan. So that's really a third category, which really doesn't require a burden. It is in fact the movement of this application to satisfy the comp plan proposal for a hospital overlay zone. So that's the good thing as far as the rezoning process. I'm in total agreement, Janine, with your staff comments. First and foremost, in total agreement, a fast food restaurant would not be an appropriate use within this zone, just as you've explained. Certainly cafes and restaurants that accommodate the facility would be appropriate. Second would be, I would agree that I don't know how you can develop this overlay zone and the future image and vision of the hospital center without an interior landscape plan. If you look at the site plan, it's a mishmash of different properties and different uses adjacent. I think the preparation of an interior landscaping plan with an eye to buffering any particular residential uses and so on would be important. So I'm strongly suggesting that the applicant prepare an interior landscaping plan with buffering as part of this application. The third item, I'm in total agreement with that there should be a comprehensive signage plan for the overlay zone. And maybe the suggestion there is rather than the DRB piecemeal reviewing applications, what the DRB should probably do is review and ultimately approve the overall design code. Once that's done, the project can proceed consistent with the design code and would not require further DRB action. So that's one suggestion there in terms of a signage plan as well as an architectural design code. And again, I think this is a big deal. I think this is very important for the town. I think this is a great step forward to take the nucleus of this critical use for the town and turn it into the real jewel that it's becoming pretty quickly. So again, these are all creative and intended to be positive suggestions on how to make this application truly good for the town of La Plata. So again, those would be 4 recommendations I would make at the point when the commission would determine to recommend that the town council proceed. And that's pretty much the extent of my list for this applicant.
And I do have one more thing. I apologize. I forgot to mention after I did have a conversation with the applicant today. I got a little click happy when I was making the proposed hospital campus overlay map. So there is one property, which is 601 Charles Street. It's at the very corner of Charles Street and Oak Avenue. That is not included in the hospital campus zone overlay. So that one property would be removed from that map. That was my mistake. Like I said, I just started going around. So at the very corner, 601 Charles Street, or Oak Avenue, as some, it goes both ways. Where the current dash-in is located, that property would be excluded, yes, from this request. So I just wanted to make that clear that I would need to amend this map prior to moving forward with any public hearings or town council review.
Thank you for that clarification. Other questions or comments from commissioners?
I have a question. So based on the recommendations and once they're considered, will the applicant be required to come before the commission again once these recommendations have been made?
Well, I think,
Danielle,
sorry, John, one, as I understand the process, if the Planning Commission recommends this application to move forward, it would then be the creation of the ordinance by the town council, which would then come back to the Planning Commission for review and public hearing. And I would suggest at that stage is where the real details and nuts and bolts of the 4 items I've suggested can be reviewed in greater detail. And then obviously it's up to the Planning Commission to recommend, based on the public hearing, the adoption of that, what we would call a finalized version of the ordinance. Does that make sense?
So I'm thinking
It
that
does.
Tracy might actually have more to her question. After the process, John, that you just described, if the hospital chooses to erect another building or something on the property, would the hospital have to come as an applicant to the Planning Commission for that?
yes, if it was a major site plan, any process that would still be under the Planning Commission's purview would still come back for review and approval. It would just need to be in compliance with the hospital campus overlay zone
Right,
requirements.
okay.
So we'd have to look at the landscaping or anything that was under this code, whereas, as opposed to the regular zoning code sections.
So Tracy, I didn't want to put words in your mouth, but that certainly helped clarify it for me too.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, not to put you on the spot, John, but I think you pretty much already worded a good motion here. Could I ask you to accept that and make the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to make a motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the Town Council the consideration of this zoning map and text amendment with 4 provisions, which will be further reviewed at the later review stages. Number 1, no fast food restaurant. Number 2, there needs to be an interior landscape and buffering plan prepared. Number 3, there needs to be a comprehensive signage plan for the entire zone. And finally, please develop a project architectural design code, which once approved should help in the future in terms of the length of time reviews would occur. So those are the 4 considerations I'm attaching to the recommendation that the commission approve this request tonight.
Thank you. Do I hear a second for that motion?
I second it.
Did someone just speak?
I did. I said I second.
Okay, thank you, Tracy.
Mhm.
Any further discussion on the motion that's been properly seconded? Not hearing any. Is anyone opposed to this motion? Not hearing that. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time this evening. Recommendation will go to the Town Council for ordinance and public hearing with those exceptions noted.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to furthering this along in the future.
Likewise. Take
Thank
care.
Have a good evening. Thank you all.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the 2020 annual report. Janine?
Okay, so before you tonight is the 2020 annual report. I didn't have a staff report because it kind of speaks for itself. Hopefully everyone had a chance to look through this and review the information because there is a lot of it, so I don't want to belabor anything tonight by going through all of the details. But I will say that I've included the cover letter, which will need to be signed by the Planning Commission Chair, and that will be the cover letter to go to the state of Maryland along with the rest of the documentation. So within the annual report, you do have the annual report itself, and that is provided by staff, giving a breakdown about all of our meetings that have happened throughout the calendar year of 2020. I've broken it out with a table of contents to show the Planning Commission meetings, Board of Appeals, and Design Review Board. I then go into a plan implementation and development process, including our comprehensive plan update, zoning code amendments, and our proposed resource protection standards chapter that's making its way through Town Council at this time. I then go into our development review section that notes any amendments and growth-related changes in development patterns. We did have quite a few because of our comprehensive plan update and subsequent zoning change requests that came in as part of that. I also update the state on our geographic information system, our technical review team, some of our process improvements, and then I get into our development capacity analysis, permit data, and then finally our school seat allocations. So of note within here, especially since we have a new member on board, was the kind of quick and short overview of our comprehensive plan process, leading to the adoption on September 28th and it becoming effective on October 13th. I went into the overview on our zoning code amendments. I tried to be thorough in what changes were made while still keeping it more of a summarized example for the state. They can read our code if they really want to. And then I move into our resource protection standards chapter, which as I mentioned, will be going back before the town council. And I believe it's scheduled for adoption at the business meeting this month, if I'm not mistaken. Within our development and growth related change, I mentioned our annexations that were approved last year for 143 Morgan's Ridge Road, 108 Scroggin Street, and the 214-216 Oak Avenue. Our town boundary was expanded to include those properties and the zones that they were subsequently added to. And then I also got into the zoning map request or zoning requests that we received for several of the properties, leading to our zoning map amendment. And finally, the University of Maryland Charles Regional Medical Center Hospital Campus Zone, which we just heard tonight. And then also, just as an update for the town council, since we have our geographic information system, we recently just updated our GIS system from a basic license to a standard license, which is going to give me the opportunity to try and update the town's boundary based on deeds that we have record of. So I can try to make sure that our town boundary is a little bit more accurate than what it may be today. I'm also going to be working with Charles County government and their GIS specialists to share information and make sure that our maps are lining up. Sometimes when you go to the Charles County GIS map online and the town's map, you'll notice that there's some areas that aren't quite cohesive with one another. One property shows it's in the town, the other one shows it's in the county. So we've been working together to try to resolve any of those issues to bring those together. I also did a brief synopsis of our development capacity analysis and our active and proposed developments in the town. So I have our active developments on page 11 of the document and our proposed, anything that's kind of either haven't quite submitted a site plan yet or hasn't been annexed into the town is under the proposed development. And then anything that we currently have in the town and have actually received some sort of plan for, I've put under our active development. And so you can see the number of units that we're looking at remaining for development in the town. We're going to see a significant increase in residential building permits. And I've included kind of what we've issued in the past versus projected building permits for residential new construction. So starting in 2017, we had 33 building permits, all the way up until 2020, where we issued 101 residential building permits. Again, 2021, we're looking at 108. 2022, we start to get to 567 permits, and then 2023, 795 building permits, all the way up until 2025, where we're looking at 880 building permits. So we're going to see a significant increase in our residential development, and of course that can be tied largely to the Heritage Green development. Anything that's included in that building projection above is something that we actually have noted that is currently in the town or is going to be annexed soon. So it gives us a fairly accurate look at what we're going to be seeing moving forward. And then we get into our building permits, or permits that were issued in 2020. And I'll just point out a couple important ones. So of course, new residential was 101. Residential occupancies was 88. We look at new commercial. We didn't have any new commercial buildings in 2020, but I'm sure that's a good indicator that we were under the COVID pandemic and commercial businesses were struggling. So we didn't see a lot of new commercial. We had 31 commercial occupancies. Most of them were tenant fit outs or a reuse of an existing space, which is always great as well. And with that, I think those are the most important ones to note for the Planning Commission. We did have 4 grading permits that were associated with existing projects, including Heritage Green. For school seat allocations, for 2020 calendar year, as far as the total by housing type, there was 82. And then when you look at our school seat allocation table by subdivision, it came out to 37. So any of the totals that are in those are rounded to the nearest whole number, just to make things a little bit easier on the chart. And then within the overall annual report, we do have the annual report long form. That is the standard report that we have to fill out on behalf of the state. And it kind of goes through some of the same topics that we mentioned within our annual report draft, getting into parcels with residential capacity versus, how many we've actually built or what the residential capacity is in units. So there's a lot of data in there. Again, hopefully everyone was able to take a look at that. And if you have any questions, let me know. And then I also have our Appendix A, which is our school seat allocation chart. This is a breakdown by the subdivisions, and we have 2 pools at this point. One for anything that's less than 50 lots, and pool number 2, which is anything with 50 lots or more. So we have a breakdown by property or by subdivision, and the number of school seat allocations that were issued. And then I have some charts just to kind of break down those numbers for easier viewing. And then finally, the last bit of this is the permits that were issued by month as Appendix B. So it goes through the type of permit, how many were issued through each month of the year. And then I also included those as charts as well for easier viewing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Planning Commission to see if anyone has any specific questions, concerns, edits, anything that they wanted to point out for me to take a look at before we send this off to the state.
I have some clarifying questions.
Okay.
This is for the year 2020. Okay, and so I was sitting there thinking, okay, I have to sign this, and I immediately thought of our newest member. But this is the year 2020, so we can indeed confirm that all the commissioners on the 2020 time period were trained, right?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, we're submitting this to the Maryland Department of Planning.
Yes.
Is there a due date?
It was July 1st. With everything that's been going on, we've been a little bit delayed in getting this back to you. So we can send this to the state, but they are understanding. I've already reached out to them to let them know that we are finishing this up and we'll send it to them as soon as possible.
Okay, and then I can be made available as you need. I'm assuming I'll be signing this in person with a pen in my hand, or as an electronic document?
We can do it either way. So if it's something, I can certainly send you the document for electronic signature, or if you'd like to stop on by, we can have a piece of paper ready for you with a pen.
Okay. Well, assuming the commission is comfortable with either, I live right close by, so given schedule, I could certainly make that happen.
Okay.
So any questions or comments from the other commissioners?
No questions.
Okay, and I don't think this issue requires a vote. Is that correct, Janine?
I don't believe so. And again, Danielle, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
You want to weigh in on that, Danielle?
Consensus is, would serve as approval for this. It is a report of the Planning Commission. I do have one item to note, and that the letterhead needs to be updated in the cover letter.
Thank you.
So did I hear you say that we should be taking a vote?
No, consensus is fine for this.
Okay. All right, anything else to discuss on this matter then? So the next step, Janine, you'll let me know when it's time for me to sign?
Yes, as Danielle graciously noted, this is the second time I've done this now, because I started this prior to the new town council taking over. I will update the letterhead on that cover letter, and then I will contact you to come and sign that.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, Planning Department updates.
So right before that, we do have a note about the August Planning Commission meeting. National Night Out, I guess, is happening this year. So I wanted to verify if there was an alternative date that would work for the Planning Commission to meet instead of the regularly scheduled meeting on August 3rd. So I proposed a couple other dates. We do have to keep in mind that the town council meetings were changed to Tuesdays at 6 p.m. So any Tuesdays will probably not be a good fit for rescheduling. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. If everyone has a date that would work for them tonight, that's great. Or if you want to get back to me via email so we can coordinate that, that's fine as well.
I'd recommend the following night, the 4th. Keep it as close to the original date as possible.
That date worked for me. In fact,
That would
anything
be
in August, I can't
August
see
4th.
that far ahead.
Yes, August 4th.
That's fine for me.
Okay. Tracy, does that work for you?
No objections, yes.
Okay. And we'll assume for the time being that it'll work for Deborah. She's away on vacation today.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make that change to our in the calendar invite and to our schedule for August 4th.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing me back to that. So Planning Department updates now?
Yes. So let's see if I can find my way here. So for our Planning Department updates, we have for our upcoming projects, for development review, we still have the Lowe's Addition major site plan that's hanging out there. They're currently working through some stormwater management comments. And we do like to wait until they have at least step 2 approval before coming before the Planning Commission. So once they have step 2 approval for their site plan, we will bring that before the Planning Commission. Heritage Green, the first neighborhood within the subdivision, neighborhood K. Major subdivision for 176 lots is currently under staff review. And we will be finishing that up here this week, and then we'll follow up to see where we're at as far as the major subdivision is concerned. 109 Charles Street will be a major site plan for 37 apartments. It's a proposed apartment complex right on Charles Street, located behind the Baldus office building and Baldus Retail Center.
Is that
They
the,
have gotten.
I'm sorry to interrupt, is that the, that grassy hill where the IGA used to be, where the Boy Scouts have the Christmas trees?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So they did already receive design review board approval for the building facade and architectural design. So the next step will be to submit the major site plan and stormwater management for review. And then we have townhomes at Potomac Square, which will be a major subdivision with 22 townhomes, give or take. They were annexed into the town a couple of years ago. And so they have started to submit for stormwater management and some of their site work. And then we'll be getting their major subdivision shortly for review. And then the Plated Garden will be a major site plan. That is the vacant property located on Washington Avenue and at the corner of Heritage Green Parkway, directly next to the new Sage Point Senior Assisted Living Facility that was just built. So that is a proposal coming forward. They've submitted their forest stand delineation and their concept stormwater management plan. So we are starting to review that one. It'll be a little bit down the line for the Planning Commission, but it has begun. So what is the Planning Department working on? So we are working on our subdivision ordinance and school seats. I will be taking a presentation or a memo to the town council at their July 13th work session to kind of go over how we're going to need to handle school seat allocations. In the past, it wasn't something that we necessarily worried about. We noted it, but we didn't pay too close attention to the number of school seats on preliminary plans or final plats. That will need to change because of the new residential development that we're going to be seeing. So we will have to establish our pools officially. As I noted on our annual report, we kind of showed two pools, one with less than 50 lots and one with 50 lots or more. But within the town code, we actually have 4 pools that are established. So as part of my presentation to the town council next week, we're going to start that conversation. I've been working with the Board of Education and Charles County government to kind of look at where we're at with school capacity, what our projected school seat allocations are going to look like with all these proposed developments that are happening. So that's going to be a bigger conversation, and that will play into the Planning Commission's review and approval of planning or preliminary plans and final plats. So that's something that we'll bring back for your update as soon as possible. We're also working on several manuals, FAQs, to help applicants and staff through our development process. So the development review manual is really going to play into Planning Commission approval, Design Review Board approval, how they need to submit, what the steps are to submission. And I think that it'll help not only the applicants and everyone in the development community, but it'll also give our boards and commissions and staff a clearer picture of what we need to do and what we're looking for, so we can work together a little bit more cohesively. And then I also mentioned the town boundary. I've been getting some lessons on how to use a fancy new GIS tool called Kogo, where I can type in some coordinates in a fancy way and it'll actually go ahead and just draw the town boundary for me. So I will be trying to get that update this year as well, so we can try to update our GIS maps and make sure they're all accurate. For town updates, again, I'm finishing up the FAQs and guides, finally able to get back into that. This is going to be a long-term project because there's so many items to notify the public about. I'm trying to get the most important FAQs and guides out of the way first, such as building permits. When is a building permit required? Any of our tougher processes, including stormwater management and what the process is. So I am working on that. Hopefully I'll be able to have those available in the next couple of weeks. I've been working with our PIO, or Public Information Office, on those to make sure that I'm getting everything in there that I need. We're still working through some code revisions. It's going to involve several chapters, including Chapter 75, Building Construction, 170, which is our streets, roads, and sidewalks, 173, which is our zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, Chapter 186 for waters and sewers, and we're also looking at the sign code within Chapter 191. And we are proceeding forward with our pedestrian upgrade project that will start from Radio Station Road and go all the way down through Charles Street into Willow Lane through the town to provide a sidewalk or bikeway pathway to connect the town to areas that we do not currently have pedestrian paths available. So we had submitted our application, and we're getting moving into our design phase with our consultant, which is Mead and Hunt, and hopefully that'll be something that we can get done in the next couple of years. We're trying to do this at a more rapid pace. We want to get this done. It's something that needs to be done. So we're looking forward to moving forward with that project. And that's all I have at this time, unless you have any specific questions for me.
Any questions or comments for Janine?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The apartment complex, how many units?
For the 109 Charles Street,
Yes,
37.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Janine, John, when you were talking about your school seat effort, you mentioned you're dealing with the Charles County and Board of Ed. I'm just curious, how much collaboration have they been able to provide in terms of that effort?
They've been very helpful. So the Board of Education is also going through a redistricting committee for the middle school school sites.
Right.
And so I worked with Ben Yeckley with Charles County Government and Steve Andritz with the Board of Education to create a spreadsheet, which will be available on the town council work session for everyone to see. But it takes a look at all of our projects, and it has two separate time periods of like 1 to 2 years and then 3 to 5 years based on each project and when we think that they're going to be doing development. And it gives us a pretty good idea of how many school seats we're going to be looking at. I also received data from the county on their yield factors. So I had the most recent yield factors, and Steve Andritz was able to give me the 2019 to 2020 school rated capacity for what they have currently. Again, I think it's kind of like a year behind. They don't quite have the new numbers yet, but they have been very open and very willing to work with me and to kind of show me what information they have. I think that there's definitely, how do I put this delicately? You know, the Board of Education calculates things one way. You know, it's 100% school rated capacity. I believe Charles County looks at 110% school rated capacity. So I think that there's going to be a lot of room for collaboration and working together and open conversations. I know that the county commissioners and the town council will probably need to have a conversation at some point to work through how the town is functioning into the overall school system and with school seat allocations. So I think there's a lot of room to work together, and they have been very helpful so far.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear you have a good level of collaboration with them, and it's really an issue that almost necessitates all 3 parties to come to grips with creating a better program. And so I applaud you for that effort, and it's obviously been long overdue, and we look forward to seeing it in the future. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Janine, I mentioned when we were talking about Devane's Cafe and Crepes that there was a question I was going to ask. This is probably the time to bring it up. I heard you mention in there about the Section 108, not yet approved. So the Planning Commission has already passed judgment on that in favor of it. We did that at the May meeting. What is left to be done?
So it's the logistics. So it had to go to the town council for introduction. And then it needs to go before them for the actual adoption. And I believe that's taking place on July 22nd. Danielle's at the business meeting. So it should be adopted on July 22nd.
Yes, it was introduced on June 22nd. That was after the final town attorney review and comments, and then it's scheduled for adoption July 27th.
27th. Thank you. So yeah, it's just a matter of, we do the legislation on a business meeting, so that's why it's taking a little bit longer.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments for Janine on the planning department review? Okay. Next item, let's call upon our councilwoman, Evelyn. Anything for the council in the way of an update?
Well, we have so many ordinances that we've been reviewing, but I'll just hit on a couple for the sake of time. We applied for the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA funding, in the amount of $8 million. Our town treasurer submitted that application for us, and we're just waiting to hear back. And then trying to get clarification on the use of the funds. That's not been real clear to us just yet. So they're seeking clarification on that. Danielle submitted an application for Sustainable Maryland designation. She submitted that on July 2nd, I believe. And we're waiting to hear back on our application. We are still working with Comcast on our franchise agreement. That's moving forward. It hasn't been finalized just yet. I'm just trying to work through that. On a lighter note, the council and some of the town staff attended the MML last week, and it was very informative. Learned a lot. Just learned so much about how well the town of La Plata is received by the other municipalities, and that was just extremely interesting. And our mayor, she did a wonderful job with our assistant town manager of presenting one of the workshops, and they got lots of, accolades for that. But there's more to come. We have a lot of ordinances that we will be reviewing at our business meeting and our work meetings coming up in the month of July.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Evelyn? Okay, so before we move to adjourn, Tracy, I want to thank you very much for your participation tonight. I think this was a really good meeting for you to step into for the first time. We had a wide range of things to address, and you participated in those discussions. So appreciate that and look forward to working with you in the future.
Likewise. If this is anything like future meetings, I don't know what to expect. I'm just kidding.
All right. Is there any other business to bring to the meeting before we adjourn? Then I motion that we adjourn the meeting at 7:28. Everyone have a great evening and see you on August 4th. Correct?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Tracy.
Thank you. You as well.
Take care.
Bye. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.